Welcome back to the OSM channel. In today's video, I'm going to provide a comprehensive, easy to follow, no nonsense video on how to change the engine oil on a 2017 through 2021 Honda CRV equipped with the 2.4 liter motor. Now, before we get started, let's go over the materials and tools that you're going to need for this job. I will say, if you're ever unsure of what type of oil your car calls for or the capacity of that engine oil, look at your owner's manual. Your owner's manual will clearly spell out for you what type of oil and the capacity of that oil that's required for your car. In this case, Honda requires API certified oil, meaning American Petroleum Institute certified oil. And for this engine, it calls for only OW20 oil regardless of your climate. So I have a 5-quart jug of OW20 API certified oil. Now for the capacity. The owner's manual states this car requires 4.7 quarts of oil, so I recommend getting at least a 5-quart jug. Never hurts to get a little bit extra in case you burn some oil in between your oil changes. That way you can always top off your oil and be good to go. You're going to need an oil filter. I am trying this Motorcraft FL-816 oil filter because Amazon Garage said it would fit this car, so we'll have to see about that. Additionally, underneath the engine, there is a splash pan, an aluminum splash pan if I'm not mistaken, that is held onto the bottom of the car with 10mm fasteners. So you're going to need some type of 10mm socket or driver and a 10mm bit. The oil drain bolt, according to my records, is a 17mm fastener, so 17mm socket wrench. Disposable gloves, paper towels or shop towels, oil filter wrenches, an oil catch pan, and I recommend placing a piece of cardboard underneath the front of the motor in case you spill some oil. It's not going to stain your floor. Now, the first thing you need to do is to drive your car up onto some ramps, set the emergency parking brake, and shock the rear wheels. Additionally, I highly recommend placing jack stands on the frame in case the ramps were to fail. You have a little bit of protection, and that might just save your life. With that being done, let's go underneath the car and start removing that splash shield. Before I go underneath the car, I like to crack the oil fill cap on the top side of the engine. I feel like it just helps to allow that oil to drain out. Now we're underneath the front of the car. Here's that aluminum splash pan that I was referring to earlier that needs to be removed. 10mm fasteners. Looks like this originally had 9 fasteners, but we're down to 3. 2 in the front, 1 in the back. So let's get those fasteners removed, get this pan out of the way. So I have the fasteners removed. Before I remove this splash guard, I just want you to pay attention to one thing. Towards the passenger side of the car, you'll see lettering that says TLE. Well, to the right of that, towards the rear of the car, notice that there's a little plastic tab that is received into the splash guard, and that just kind of keeps it up. So just pay attention to that when you go to reinstall this panel. So we'll slide this towards the rear of the car, drop this down, and get it out of the way. Make sure you're wearing safety glasses when you do this. We now have access to everything we need. So if you look at the underside of the engine, there's lettering here. It says engine oil with an arrow pointed this way, which that points right to this bolt. This is your engine oil drain bolt. So we're going to remove that here momentarily, but I also just want to point out, here is your engine oil filter, and it is pitched on like a 45-degree angle. So if you decide to pre-fill your oil filter, you're only going to be able to fill that up, maybe a third of the way before it starts spilling out. Maybe halfway, something like that. So let's remove this oil drain bolt and ensure that our catch pan is positioned as to where it will catch the oil. Now while that engine oil continues to drain out, let's remove the engine oil filter. If you have a standard size catch pan, it should be able to catch the oil droplets from both of these. There we go. Now it is time to install the new engine oil filter. Before you install the new engine oil filter, always check your engine. Make sure that there's no seal that's still stuck onto the engine. I don't see anything here. Going to take a little bit of old oil, lubricate the O-ring. I like to spin these filters counterclockwise until I hear a little click. Not that. There's the click. I'll rotate it clockwise. That just helps to prevent cross-threading. Put a paper towel on and we'll get this filter as tight as we can by hand. All right, that's as tight as I can get it by hand. I'm just going to wipe off any residual oil on the bottom of the engine case. Now it's time to reinstall the engine oil drain bolt. Now there is a crush washer on here. You always want to inspect that. This one appears to be in good condition. Some guys swap these out every oil change. To be honest, I've never replaced one of these and I've never had an issue, so just something to keep an eye on though. Tighten up this drain bolt. You don't have to go crazy here. Just get it snug. I'm sure there's a torque spec. Don't know what that is offhand. Again, wipe off any residual oil. So now we can reinstall the splash guard. Again, what I pointed out earlier was this retention clip. So when you reinstall the splash guard, just ensure that it engages with the splash guard. There's a round side and a flat side. Flat side goes towards the front of the car and the flat side is received above this plastic trim. So we'll slide it towards the back of the car and we'll slide it forward, ensuring that goes over this front plastic trim. And I'm looking for that retention clip. See, it just popped in. Slide it forward, and now this will stay up. So that gives you two hands to start all of the fasteners by hand. Well, it should stay in place anyway. And after you get all your fasteners started by hand, you can switch over to the driver if you'd like. You know, snug them up, but don't over torque them. Wouldn't take much to strip these. You know, something like that. That's all you need. That's it. We're done under here. Now it is time to add the new engine oil into the motor. If you purchase a 5-quart jug, here's my tip for you. Look at the spine of that jug. There should be a sight gauge. In this case, the left side measurements are in quarts, the right side measurements are in liters. Pay no attention to liters because we're only paying attention to quarts. Now originally this jug was filled up to this upper black line, 5 quarts. I poured approximately 0.3 quarts out of this oil into a separate holding jug, and that has left us with approximately 4.7 quarts of motor oil in this jug. So we should be safe to pour this entire jug, which is now 4.7 quarts of oil, directly into the motor. So I've changed the engine oil in this car many times. Basically at this point you have 3 options. Option 1 is to start the car, shut the car off, check the oil level again, and determine whether you need to add more or not. I advise against that because I found that if you were to start the car now, the engine is very loud initially, meaning it sounds and feels like it's not getting adequate lubrication from that engine oil, almost like it's running dry for a moment. So another option is to try and put the car, I believe they call it clear flood mode, which according to my understanding is you push the accelerator pedal all the way down and then you try and start the car, which should prevent the car from starting. However, not all cars have that clear flood mode. My truck, it does not have that feature. I don't know if this car has it or not. I don't really want to find out. So that is a potential option. Again, I advise against that as well. What I would suggest, option 3, is to go to the fuse box in the engine and pull the ignition coil fuse. And then you would turn the key. The motor will not be able to start because we remove power from the ignition coils. That allows the engine oil to circulate. And then after we've done that for a few seconds, we'll reinstall that fuse, we'll start the engine, shut it off, check the oil level again, and determine if we need to add more. The only small quirk with option 3, the way I do it, is you may find that your car has a temporary engine code for maybe a half a day. It clears itself really quick if it does even come up. So, I mean, if you're going for emissions inspection, you know, the next day or something like that, just something to be mindful of, but I've never had an issue in the past, and I think, or well, I believe that is the best way to do this, but, you know, to each his own. So I'm going to show you how to start the engine now, what I believe to be the safest way, option 3 in my way. So go in your engine, to the right of the battery, you'll find your engine bay fuse box. Pull the dust cover off by pushing these 2 tabs inward and pulling up. you're going to need the fuse removal tool, which that slides right out. And what you're going to be looking for is fuse 15. You can see I've marked it with a marker because this is the way I've always done this. So fuse 15 is a 15 amp fuse, and it states ignition coil. And again, that's the fuse you want to pull. I've also marked the fuse in here. I'll show you exactly where that fuse is now. All right, let me show you what fuse to pull. Zooming in on this box, this is what your box should look like. Now you should see these two copper plates right here. Well, it's in this row. If you go up 1 slot, 2 slot, 3 slot, see that blue fuse that I've marked with some white marker as well? That is the fuse we need to pull. That guy right there. Slide your fuse removal tool over that fuse and pull the fuse out. Now I'm going to go in the driver's seat with the key, and I'm going to turn the engine over for, I don't know, 4 or 5 seconds. The car will not start. And that is that. Now that oil has circulated through that engine, and we're going to reinstall that fuse now, and now the car is going to start much smoother, and you're not going to hear any noises as if the engine were running dry like you would if you didn't go through this procedure. Sorry about the shaky hand, but let's reinstall fuse 15. 15 amp. Put this fuse holder back in the dust cover on top of the fuse box, and we'll reinstall this cover. Now I have not started the car yet, but I know when I start the car, I'm going to want to back it off these ramps and get the car on a flat level surface, so when we check the engine oil level, we'll get an accurate reading. So I'm going to remove the jack stands as well as the rear wheel chocks. With the jack stands removed and the rear chocks removed, I'm now going to start the car, back it off the ramps onto a flat level surface. I want you to pay attention to how smooth the engine sounds. If you did not go through this procedure, I guarantee your engine would sound very rough. So that engine startup was nice and smooth. That's how it should be. So you want to let your car idle for maybe 15 seconds, shut it off, and double check your engine oil level. You would check your engine oil level with this orange dipstick, and take a paper towel and just dry off the end of this. What you're looking at or looking for, there should be 2 dots, and you want your engine oil in between those 2 dots. So once you get this dry, put it back in that dipstick tube, all the way down, pull it back out, and look in between those 2 dots. Look to see where the oil level is. And you could see it's between those 2 dots, but it's a little bit lower than I'd like. I'd like to see it a little bit higher. So I'm going to add another quart or 2, and then we will be good to go. That looks good. The final thing we need to do is to reset the oil life indicator. So on your instrument cluster, look for your trip button. It should be this long push rod thing. So you're going to press this and cycle through the screens right here until you get to your oil life indicator. So you were at 30%. So in order to reset this, we're going to press and hold the trip button in. And this may take 10-15 seconds. Just keep it held down. And that oil life should start flashing here in a moment. So now the oil life is flashing. What we're going to do is just push in this trip button again and hold it in. And that is how you reset the oil life indicator on a CRV.